Welcome back to the channel. This game continues the Live tournament of 1984 and features Nigel against Lev Psakhis, a Russian grandmaster who later became an Israeli citizen and a very strong grandmaster. The game started as a Sicilian defence. And the Najdorf variation. White tries to stop b5 and continue development. The queen comes out to pin the knight and threaten the e4 pawn. And then Nigel decides to take the pawn. Queen to the e2 would have been more natural, just to defend the e pawn. So the knights are traded in the centre. Nigel develops his bishop. And the white queen moves to attack the bishop and also prevent castling. Here black hits the queen with tempo. And Nigel tries to attack the queen and also allow himself to castle. Queen Judy moves away. And then Nigel plays h3. I'm assuming to stop knight g4, but a castle in this position would have been more natural and to ensure that castling was played. So the bishop comes back to pin the knight on c3 again. And then Nigel decides to break the pin with bishop to d2. Again, castling would have been better. Now he does castle, and black's slightly better. The e pawn's potentially going to drop, as we will see in the game. And black can't capture the e5 square pawn because of queen to c5 check, winning the bishop. So there's more trades, and rook e1 will hit the queen. But black has a nice tactic in queen to g6, threatening bishop takes h3 due to the pin of the pawn on g2. Nigel grabs the central e pawn, and now he must do something about the checkmate threat. He chooses to intercept with the queen. I think if he goes with the rook, this is good for black. He's got an extra pawn, and his bishop's very active. The white king is a bit loose. So he goes with the queen, and black calmly retreats the bishop, aiming to get it onto the c6 square and onto the long diagonal. Here Nigel's opts not to exchange queens, a mistake that black doesn't play, but it's still a good position for black. He plays queen to b6, check, which is a fine move, but there was a better option in f6, hitting the rook, a counter attack, ignoring the threat on the bishop. And if the rook moves, now the bishop can come to c6, threatening the mate again. The queen has to retreat to defend it. The rook hits the queen, and the queen has to move. The trade of rooks, but now the a pawn's undefended, and black can pick it up, and is now 2 pawns clearly up and in a better position, and probably winning. But he plays queen to b6 check, and then queen to h6. And now gets the bishop onto the long diagonal. And black is clearly in a much better position than white. He has an extra pawn. And white's king looks very exposed. And white hasn't really got much counterplay. Potentially g7 pawn might become a target, which he tries. But f6 kind of stops all the threats. Nigel throws a check in and then retreats his rook. And now there's a lot of to-in and fro-in with the black rooks hitting the queen. Trying to manoeuvre it into a position where he gets the queen onto a square and his rooks onto the squares. That's desirable. And now queen to h4, again renewing the threat of taking the a pawn. Nigel decides that he can't save the a pawn and centralises his rook. And here black calmly ignores the a pawn and threatens to double his rooks on the e file. Nigel hits the queen, but black counterattacks with the attack of his own, and obviously the trade of queens would be beneficial to black. Here Nigel tries a clever idea. Obviously the queen can't be taken due to rook takes e8 eventually. So it's quite a clever idea. But unfortunately black has a nice tactic in he can take the rook. And this actually forces Nigel to resign, as now the rook is pinned on e3 and can't take the rook on e8, so he must trade queens. But now the bishop's obviously defending the rook, and after this black is 2 pawns up in a bishop, even though there's an opposite colour bishop ending. The 2 extra pawns would be decisive. Quite a good game, very even up to a couple of tactics played by black that just gradually just made his position stronger, and white didn't have any real chances. So a disappointing loss for Nigel after a draw in round 9. I think he was now back to 50% again. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And until next time, cheerio, bye.